So let's unpack our assumptions in terms of before we give our predictions for the year in terms of how we're seeing the economy and then how we see that flow into the marketplace. So our baseline as we record this in February of 2024 is a minimum of 2 interest rate decreases, but a possible third one. And we see them starting in around August, September. Okay, in terms of the labour market, we see unemployment needs to move into that sort of 4.1 to 4.3 to start seeing the first rate cut. And then ultimately by the end of the year, we see that unemployment rate being between 4.3 and 4.5%. Consumer spending is going to continue to fall in the first half of the year as more of those fixed rates and those higher interest costs and also higher rents affect about 70% of the marketplace. So ultimately, we're going to see consumer spending still to be challenged, which is all part of that. Remember, consumer represents about 55 to 60% of the gross domestic production that we have in this country. So that's obviously, sort of effectively, over half of the production of growth and in the economy that we're going to get. So that's going to be challenged. We do see that picking up a little bit as consumer sentiment shifts on the back of some of those rate decreases. Definitely a softer landing. I don't think we're going to have any challenges of a recession unless things get significantly worse. We see inflation returning to the top of the RBA cycle range by the end of 2024. So we think that inflation will have a 3 in front of it. And then by 2025, we see by mid-2025 around the inflation rate being around 2.5%. Now, in terms of this overall easing cycle, this is the really exciting bit. When you start thinking about it, we expect between sort of 100 to 150 basis points of easing as part of this cycle, which means that will take the cash rate down into the sort of low 3s, late 2s in terms of what those numbers look like. So if you're thinking about that, and this is why you've got to be thinking in years and decades, not in months and years, is, basically that's a good news story in terms of bringing it back down to a more balanced. Remember, we're currently in restrictive. We don't want to be in stimulative, but we want to get back to a balanced or what they call normalised. The RBA will refer to it as normalised rate setting, which basically gets the economy moving in a current sense. What about our derailers, Bryce? Where are the risks?
Domestic government or political interference in the form of, keep whatever spending they inject into the marketplace, which will mess with that inflation read. So if they were to do that, keep it higher. If the people, Ben, they keep on putting their hands in their pocket and they keep on spending to a level that doesn't tame that inflation genie, well, then clearly that will have an impact on keeping interest rates higher for longer. And any supply shocks that happen as a result of any of the stuff that's happening overseas, Ben, i.e., high oil prices, that will then flow into the read, that will then flow into the calculation of the inflation number, which will then force the hand of the RBA. So there's a couple of little asterisks, Ben, on our base case, which is super important when you're making forecasts.